Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome to Bobo FM with your two favorite hosts.
Indeed, indeed. Another beautiful day here in the Cayman Islands and another terrific opportunity here on Straight Talk to engage you, the listening audience, on topics that certainly are important to you. And, of course, our ongoing efforts to educate, enlighten, and elevate. The phone lines are open at 745-2626. If you want to join the conversation with a comment or a question, we'd love to hear from you. If talking isn't your thing, by all means, you can send us a WhatsApp message at 928-2562, or you can shoot us a voice note, and we'll also use that over WhatsApp. We are also simulcast live. Not only are we coming to you live on your radio dial at Bobo FM, but we're also simulcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram this evening. So whatever is convenient to you, what is important to us is that you tune in. Today is, what is today? Today is Wednesday. Tuesday.
25th of February. I know, time flies, right?
It is. I had one of your probably inappropriate thoughts in terms of how you remember the days of the week.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, we can't say that Tuesday. We can't even say that Wednesday. So we got to come up with.
Hey, I want you to know that you need to clarify these inappropriate terms. This is getting me in trouble, Austin. There's people who listen to this program.
Well, I'll clarify it at the break, and then you'll go, yes, you're right. It's a good thing you didn't say that, Mr. Harris. It's a good thing.
All right.
Well, we do have a guest in studios, and those of you who are obviously tuned in via YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook already knew who that guest is, but those of you in radio land don't quite yet. But we do have a practice, Ellio.
Yeah.
Sharing a little bit of good news before we get into our main conversation.
Okay.
And good news is getting kind of scarce, kind of hard to find. I had to, quote-unquote, go digging through the news.
Well, considering that we have a specific guest, you mean additional good news?
In addition, of course. Thank you again.
You're welcome. That's why I'm here.
That's why you are here.
I am here to help.
In addition to the best news of the day, which is our guest in studio, we have this other bit of news that we thought we'd share with you to kick off the conversation. Last Friday, the John Gray High School held its annual career fair with more than 70 entities across the Cayman Islands business landscape, but also those from the public and private sectors in attendance, showcasing their business to attendees. The organizer, Ms. Tanya Johnson, the Cayman Islands Education Center career advisor, said the objective of the career fair was to introduce years 9, 10, and 11 students to a variety of career fields by hosting companies who were there to discuss career pathways and opportunities.
That's cool.
So, again, we have been and we remain to be on this job training kick, putting a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of employers, but we cannot ignore, obviously, the good work that they do by participating in programs like this. Balance, right? Balance. So Ms. Johnson did say that on the one hand, in some cases, students are actually getting interviews from the employers who attend the job fairs, and some of them are actually either getting jobs or commitments for jobs or commitments for apprenticeship opportunities when they do graduate. So I think that is very positive. It also helps the students to practice mock interviews and job interview skills, which they're going to need, those who aren't going off to university, but even those who are going off to university, because your kids, my kids, there's summer breaks, there's holiday breaks. You're not going to catch up on the couch. You're going to go work whilst you're here, because that's what part of being an adult is all about. Miss Johnson, though, made one suggestion, and this is like the sugar with a little bit of salt. I think it's a good suggestion, but she challenged the businesses who were present. She said it is an incredibly beneficial if these sectors focused on providing scholarships, not only for the high academic achievers, but also those who demonstrate a willingness to learn practical skills to a high level, perhaps in schools and colleges overseas. So again, I think it's a fabulous suggestion. We normally give scholarships to those who have the academic credentials to get there, and they're shortlisted. They go up against a number of students across the island, and usually the best wins. The cream rises to the crop, as they to the top, they say.
Right.
but that excludes a large section of our students and people in general. You know, you have some quote unquote white collar workers who are, you know, destined for the office job, and you know they got the analytical, maybe the math skills to do it.
Yeah.
But there are other people that are just fantastic with their hands. I mean, I admire all of you. I tell people all the time, I know what a hammer looks like, but don't ask me what to do with it.
Yeah, well,
I admire folks who can use that hammer, frankly.
I've been doing all kinds of things, office work as well, but I love the construction. Give it up any day. But, you know, just very quickly, because I don't want to delay introducing our guests and keep people waiting. Wouldn't want to do something like that.
Right.
But my first job, you know, I remember going on they used to have a little bit of a training sometimes, like on summer vacation, something like that. And I remember going to work for Royal West Trust.
Yeah.
And this was some combination between Royal Bank and something else. It was right upstairs to Old Royal Bank in the middle of town.
Got it.
And then for some reason, I must have did a really good job. And as soon as I got out of high school, they offered me a job. So that was my first job.
Yeah,
you know. So I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear about programs. Like
No,
that.
I was exactly the same way. Just vis-a-vis, it was Washington International Bank at the time, which would go on to become Bank of Butterfield. So I was apprenticing with them in my junior year, I think it is, in high school.
You have a similar story.
And out of high school, I had a job. So yeah, it is a fantastic program. I just want to commend those businesses, both public and private sector, who gave up their time and expertise to go down and talk to the next generation,
Making
those
that
who are getting
investment
ready to graduate,
in our
those
youth,
who are close to graduating, and showing them what opportunities are available to them across Cayman's labor force, and giving them that opportunity to either come straight to work or perhaps be so enthralled with what they see in the actual workforce to, you know, hone their career skills and go off to university, get a diploma or two, and come back and work at a very high level. I think it's commendable. I commend the Cayman Islands Education Center and the John Gray High School. But I will say that all the schools do have their career fairs. I'd like to see UCCI do more than one career fair a year. I mean, there's nothing wrong with 2 or 3. Why not? We have the businesses for it. But it is kudos to them. And certainly the benefactors of all of this are school leavers.
Absolutely.
That's what matters.
Sounds good. That was good news, Austin.
That was good.
I'm impressed.
Excellent. Well, you know, we have a commitment. We want to try to
And you really
ease
went
into
digging
our
for that one.
conversations. And like I said, good news sometimes is hard to find.
You went digging for that one, Austin.
Once upon a time, people used to criticize Ellio and I for being, quote unquote, too controversial, because we would never start with good news. We would focus on all the
sun is
sticky
shining,
issues.
Ellio.
And those who have gone on to blessed memory today would call up and say, you know, the sun is shining.
The sun
Drew
is
breath
shining.
this morning.
Yeah.
You're alive right now, every day above ground, type of thing. So there's always some silver lining in every bit of day, and we do try to at least find one of them. And today, there was literally
Well, I'd just like to commend you, Austin, and in the spirit of transparency, state that I came in here, you were pulling your hair out, looking through all sorts of papers, saying, no, Ellio, I'm not going to give up. There has to be something positive in here. And I'm just, you know, I want to commend you. You found it.
I did. I had to go through 3 different media houses to find it, but I found a good news story.
And now we get to pair it with another wonderful piece of news.
Now we get to pair it with the best news of the day. We do have a guest in studios, and again, those of you not tuned in via YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram already know this, but to you in the listening audience on your radio dial, you don't know this, but you will know this. It is our pleasure to welcome in studios local architect, entrepreneur, the former president of the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce, and the consistent, ever-present at all times to this day, community activist on all things Caymanian. It is our pleasure to welcome our friend.
That's
We
right.
may also add that moniker to his list of attributes, Mr. Eddie Thompson. So,
Good evening,
Eddie,
good evening.
and great to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Actually, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm just looking around as I walked in here, just saying to myself, wow, it just takes it back. For those who don't know, I actually went to school with Ellio, so we've known each other from what?
Proof.
10 years of
went
age?
to school.
Yeah, schoolmates,
You got at
schoolmates.
least one witness.
There you go. I'll back it up. Either that or we were playing hooky, but
You're right, Austin.
But
That
yeah.
is proof.
yeah, and then obviously I've known you since you were knee height to grasshopper. Not that I'm that much older than you, but yeah. So it's taking me back down memory lane in a very quick way. But yeah, thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm a pleasure to be here.
And I also learned in chatting with Eddie prior to obviously going live, it's also a homecoming for him. He designed the studio that we are sitting in right now. As a matter of fact, he designed
This does not surprise
this
me.
entire floor I believe,
They
if that's
actually
correct.
repurposed the entire structure. This building was originally an AC supply distribution center, and yeah, so the owner Don Seymour and Stingray Media, which by the way, I hope you don't mind, I'll take this opportunity to publicly say congratulations on Stingray Media. Mr. Seymour has done an amazing job. He's got an amazing crack team out there at it. Blake and the rest of the crew, absolutely fantastic, and they're just growing leaps and bounds. So I've always been honored to work with them, and we did this many years ago. So yeah, definitely looking back at it, going, oh wow, never pictured myself being inside the actual studio on the mic, but so yeah, I certainly enjoying seeing this side of it.
Well, again, we thank you for it. It's a beautiful studio. And Ellio, we have him to blame because we still have no window. They locked us in a padded room.
There's a reason. But Ada, I'm sure, drives around Cayman saying, I did that one. Because I know I have at least one apartment that he drew. So we owe him. And that one has a couple of windows, actually.
It does.
Well, again, we welcome him and welcome home. The studio was designed by architect Eddie Thompson. But that's not what we have gathered here together to talk about today. Today's topic will be on the subject of beach vendors and its implications on our culture and tourism. And if we can just sort of, I guess, get the ball rolling. The subject of beach vendors, has been pro and has been con. On the one hand, it's encouraging to see largely Caymanian-owned businesses, owned and operated businesses, operating and getting a piece of our tourism product, both them as well as what we often hear from the visitor. Where are the locals? Show me a local. Where do they eat? Where do they hang out? What do they do business? We see locals very much forward-facing, in particular, in this instance, the public beach, which is where they're located, largely in the beach vendor side. But on the opposite end of the coin, the introduction of beach chairs, the introduction of water sports activities takes away from what has always traditionally been the tranquility, peace and quiet on the beach. Certainly the introduction of commerce on the beach is a new phenomenon for us in the Cayman Islands, whereas it's certainly, you can get everything from your hair braided to, jerk chicken on the beach and on any other Caribbean island, but we've never really largely done business on the water to the extent that we're doing now. And that has brought a few challenges, problems, and/or criticisms, I might add. So maybe we'll start off from there. Your take on the present beach vendor situation, and perhaps even ways you can think of improving it.
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, and the invite, as I understood, it came about from the video that I took and posted, which I had no idea, was going to get the reaction it did, because when I did it, it was not calculated in any way. I was just so frustrated and incensed, really, that to see my beautiful beach, and when I say mine, just like every other Caymanian, I expect to claim it as theirs because it's our country or our island. And
just for the listeners' benefit, you mentioned video. I'm assuming this was posted on social media.
I posted. This was probably October, November sometime. I was doing a beach walk and I posted it on my personal Instagram and Facebook page, and then it just got shared everywhere.
All right. Is it still up there?
I haven't taken it down, so yes,
right. So
and many reshares as well. So yeah, Cayman Eddie is my IG.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just incensed every weekend, and particularly Sunday mornings, I take my dog for a beach walk. I'm going for a beach walk, might as well take him along as well. And for that particular morning, I said, I'm going to just change it up, and instead of going to the Governor's Beach, I'll start at the public beach. And when I got my dog out and started walking, and we're talking very early in the morning, 6:30. Normally when I go, I was just dumbfounded, just completely awestruck in the amount of garbage that was just strewn everywhere, from discarded chicken bones, plastic cups, plastic wrappers, paper plates, just overflowing garbage everywhere. And I thought to myself, this is not our island. This is just not on. And then as I kept walking through, and I just decided to start filming, and I didn't do a live one. I videoed it, and I actually said, I was saying what was on my mind on the video.
Right.
And this is not, to be clear, this is not the first time it happened. I thought it would actually have been dealt with because I'd actually reported it to authorities, and I reported it to people who I knew were affiliated with this. And even if it was going to be bad, I didn't expect it to be even worse than when I'd reported it previously.
Right.
So as I was walking around, then I started noticing, the smell of controlled substances being burnt. In this particular case, marijuana.
Yeah.
And to me, listen, I fully support the decriminalization, and I also think that if you're an adult and you want to do it and in the confines of your own space, that's on you. Just like how I would choose to drink or not drink. Obviously, we can debate. That's a whole different debate. But the point being is, this is an open public space, and in particular, very popular for children.
Yeah.
So
Families,
yeah. So therefore, for those myriads of reasons, are just not the place.
Right.
And there is absolutely no sign of any concern or any supervision or any sort of structure that could control or curtail any of that stuff. And so that just left me incensed, and I therefore made the video and posted it on my page. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear to see the reaction. I think it was shared over between 3,000 and 5,000 times. And I'm like, oh wow.
Wow.
It
Yeah,
certainly struck a nerve.
quite a few people saw
So it
it.
didn't just strike my nerve; it struck other people's nerve, and I got a lot of calls on it.
Right.
But so to my point is that what's disappointing to me is that the authorities that be clearly are lacking on some sort of structure to sort this out. So, and let me be fair to parks and recreations, and I'm going to be limited in that because at the end of the day, I still think everybody holds their responsibilities. But you can only do what you're equipped. Work with the tools you're equipped with, and
Right.
and if it is that they are not given what they're needing, then it needs to change. Because here's my thought process on this: we know for sure that we spend tens of millions of dollars on advertising the wonderful product Cayman Islands, and in particular 7 Mile Beach, which is the part that I was on, was an integral part of that.
Right.
And then we spent all this money, and by the way, we're renowned for being the top 5 most expensive destinations in the world, as I understand it, or thereabouts. We certainly have that dubious distinction. So to have all of that, and then to walk up to this field where you can be any beach in the Caribbean, and in fact, I dare say there's many other Caribbean beaches that are a whole lot nicer, but we all know that we usually carry a generally high standard of living here on the island. It just doesn't bode well. You know, the ad hoc tents, the ad hoc food stalls, paraphernalia from other countries, not representing our brand.
Right.
And I have no problems. I love me Jamaica. I love me Bahamas. I love me Barbados. Anywhere. Take me to Trinidad Carnival any given day of the week. This white boy will jump.
Right. All right.
But the point being is, when it's your country, your island, it's your flag.
Sure.
And I can tell you, any Trini, any Jamaican, any Bajan, any other country will feel the same way about it. So I make no apologies for that.
Sure.
So those are the things that incensed me on this, and there is nothing there that spoke to our quote unquote Caymankind, our culture. And I get it. We are a relaxed and laid back culture, and usually we're the ones who just don't want to be seen.
Right.
So or at least be in the limelight, which is fine. But at the end of the day, let's have something branded. And so there's no cohesion between the tourism side of things, in terms of marketing side of things, and the product we're providing. It's almost like we'll leave that to you. We'll just take care of getting them here, and you do with what you want. And in any kind of organization, there's always structure.
Right.
There has to be.
Right.
So you just can't say to people, hey, free for all.
Right.
There's a reason taxi drivers have to get a certain special license.
Yes.
Tour operators have to get tour operator license.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on.
Right.
And it will be the same thing with the beach. So some people have an issue saying no vendors at all. Personally, I'm not opposed to vendors. If we have a structure in place and facilities in place that when you get there, it has to be maintained, operated in a certain way, and maintained and kept in a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you do that, I think all the other negativity falls away. Nothing will ever be perfect, but certainly the Wild West that I saw there that morning, and we see it and it's growing into other places now,
Sure.
especially as times in Cayman get harder to earn a living. People become more innovative in way to do things, and some people, let's be honest, some people don't necessarily have the degrees and the business acumen to run a tight ship, but they know enough to say, hey, if I get some chairs here, some tourists will give me $5 a chair. hey, that's the hustle.
Yes.
It's an honest living.
Yeah.
And if you're not being controlled, they're going to do with what they want and maximize their profit.
That's a good
And
observation.
that's where you need your structure in place.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Ellio,
that's my thought
I wanted to
process.
ask you some qualifying questions because, first of all, I mean, we're definitely aligned on the same page when it comes to some of the trash. In fact, I was just chatting about that. If it wasn't yesterday, it was last week. And again, also showing that where you have even some cultural differences, you bring some people to the country that it's not different. They don't see that as a problem because that's
Absolutely.
what we do back home.
Absolutely.
So on the beach, do you think it's a case that it's just a matter of cultural differences that you have people that are just throwing trash because that's what they're used to, or was it a case that hey, wasn't enough trash cans there, a combination of both? What did you walk away thinking?
It was the whole mixed bag of goods. It was definitely a desensitization of what we come to expect. I mean, growing up in Cayman, I don't think I've ever not remember hearing in on Radio Cayman at the time, or only radio station, keep Cayman clean every
Yes.
once in a while.
Yeah.
And certainly there were billboards everywhere throughout every district. Please keep Cayman clean.
Right.
And litter in, fine $500, which I don't think there are CIPS has ever issued a ticket to that regard.
As long as I've been alive.
There we go. And I think we might scratch and find one kind of case scenario when people were really screaming about it. But yeah, so then what we've also done too, to be clear, is that we are a melting pot and we are a welcoming people. And we have a very, very strong tie with the Jamaican, the islands of Jamaica, where we have families have come over here. We've welcomed, we've gone and married them, brought them here. We've gone to all the other islands. And so we have this mix of culture. And then sometimes we have to admit there's good and there's bad. We have bad spots in our island. We have places that were considered less than desirable to go to, but not when you compare it to other places, you say, oh, it's not that bad. But the point being is that then they take that and bring that here. And then you don't have the structure in place. There is nowhere near enough garbage skips.
Yeah.
And I even spoke to some of the vendors, and they said that. They said, boss, if we had more garbage cans, we could, it wouldn't look like this. And we've told, the authorities that be, and I don't know how true it is, but I don't have any reason to doubt them, that we need more. But one skip and a couple of 55-gallon barrels with garbage bags in them, it's not going to do it. And you know that every day of the week you have X amount of cruise ships and cruise shipper being delivered there. Then there is a formula by which, when I design a property, whether it's 10 apartments or 20 apartments, it dictates how many dumpsters you need. There is formulas for all of this.
Right.
So you should know. And at the end of the day, if you didn't have a formula, all you have to do is stand there for one day of observation.
Right.
And go, yeah, well, clearly we need to do something else.
Right. Right.
That's non-existent. And
Yeah.
if it is, then somebody's not implementing it.
Yeah.
So that's where my frustration was in it. So I think it's a mixed bag of all of that. Desensitization to the cleanliness of what we're accustomed to, coupled with, also youth and exuberance and what am I worried about? I find as we get older, we become more and more in tune with nature and society and everything else, and be more concerned about it because now we're looking for our kids or our grandkids. And it's just where your attention just changes a little bit. Because I remember being young and careless,
Yeah.
Never a litter bug, but
Yeah.
it's just that your priorities change as you get older,
Right.
and you see the bigger picture. And so all of those things mixed in, and then the destitute situation of it's such a high cost of living here on the island and such a hard way to make money that everybody's just, I got to focus on getting that chair rented.
Right.
And then you see the fighting on the videos amongst themselves. And again, it is not us. They may be Caymanian, but it is not us. And when I say Caymanians, as we all like to now identify, and I think, to be fair, I have no problems classifying it. You've got generational, you got new, and you've got what you call it what I call paper Caymanians.
Yeah.
And you can hear from their accents.
Right.
They're not reflecting us. They're not reflecting my culture, what I'm accustomed to growing up on. And I will make no apologies to call it out.
I think a question is what we do about it. I mean, because I gave an example here in the studio as well, where I know there was someone who was littering in my neighborhood. I spoke to them several times, and I finally got frustrated one night when I saw him throw a bottle, because I'd already complained even to his employer. And then I called the police, which I had to wait 45 minutes for the police to show up. And then they came out and did arguably absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And I won't comment on their nationality, but again, it was a case of saying, well, hey, couldn't you at least take the guy downtown, inconvenience him, and charge him $10, $25, something to try to set an example? Even if it's not going to be 500.
Do something that will make them think twice about it the next time.
Yeah, but if all you're going to do is come out, and apparently the guy admitted to throwing the trash. I doubt that he went and picked up the trash because it was way in the bush.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing was done. And I think as long as you're going to have that sort of enforcement or lack thereof, I don't see how you're going to make a change. Where I'll bet you, if you charge that guy $100, even better if it was 500, I guarantee you he will be telling all of his friends, don't throw trash. You will be paying $500 for that.
They just hit me with that, and I don't want to get that again. You better watch out.
Right. Well, we do have to pause and take a short commercial break, check in with your news brought to you by the BBC. But we have Mr. Eddie Thompson as our guest in studios, and we're taking a serious look at the whole situation of beach vendors and what can be done to improve the present circumstance that we have been discussing this afternoon. The phone lines are open at 745-2626. We'd love to hear from you as well, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come here on Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today.
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Ukrainian officials say a deal has been reached between Kiev and Washington on the joint exploitation of Ukraine's mineral resources. Details have not yet been made public, but reports suggest that the US has dropped some of its more drastic demands. Abdul Abdurasulov sent this report from Kiev.
Ukrainian officials say that the new deal is much more favorable to Ukraine, and Kyiv sees it as a good outcome. According to media reports, the revised version of the document appears to have dropped the U.S. demand to get $500 billion in potential revenues from exploiting Ukrainian natural resources. The U.S. will reportedly have financial commitments to support Ukraine, but the amount will be agreed later. The new version, however, does not specify what security guarantees will be offered to Kyiv. Ukrainian officials hope that they can discuss this matter separately during a visit to Washington soon.
Britain is to fast-track planned increases in defence spending. The announcement comes 2 days before Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets President Trump, who has been demanding Europe contribute more towards its security. Spending will rise to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. Here's our political correspondent, Rob Watson.
It is massively significant, and I don't think there's any doubt, although Keir Starmer made the argument that what had really got the ball rolling was Russia's invasion of Ukraine 3 years ago, that this is all about being able to go to Washington and say to Donald Trump on Thursday, look, we Europeans, including we in the UK, we get it. We get the idea that you think that we should be spending more on our own security. And in return, of course, Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders want Donald Trump to think again about the wisdom of doing a quick deal with President Putin. And, of course, they want him to continue to support Ukraine.
Large parts of Chile have been hit by an electricity outage impacting the country's mining industry and transport sectors and leaving millions without power. In the capital, Santiago, the metro has been evacuated. The government has ruled out a cyber attack. It says it's a result of a system failure. The Trump administration says it's to change the composition of the White House press corps. Access to presidential events will no longer be decided by the White House Correspondents Association, but by Trump administration officials. Nomia Iqbal has the details.
The press pool is made up of journalists who go wherever the president goes. But instead of letting the White House Correspondents Association choose who goes into that press pool, as it always has, the White House says it will now pick who it wants. The press secretary, Caroline Levitt, said the changes would accommodate streaming services in order to modernise the group. In a statement, the Correspondents Association said it was not warned about this and said it would never stop advocating for comprehensive access and full transparency on behalf of the American people.
World News from the BBC. A federal judge in the United States has temporarily blocked President Trump's efforts to suspend the U.S. refugee resettlement program. The judge in Seattle made his decision after refugee aid groups argued the president had exceeded his executive authority. Mr. Trump signed a flurry of executive orders on day one of his presidency, blocking the entry of migrants and freezing funding for their support. Reports from Sudan say a military plane has come down near the capital Khartoum. Details are still coming in, but some reports say senior army officers were on board the Antonov plane. It's not clear whether it was an accident or whether the aircraft was shot down. Health workers in Gaza say at least 6 newborn babies have died because of a bitter cold snap. It comes amid continued uncertainty over whether the ceasefire in Gaza will continue. Sebastian Usher is in Jerusalem.
Health officials in Gaza say that lack of heating contributed to their deaths as Palestinians seek shelter from the freezing temperatures in tents and devastated homes. They called for mediators trying to end the conflict between Israel and Hamas to do more to ensure that urgently needed mobile homes are allowed into Gaza to provide more substantial shelter for hundreds of thousands of people. There are signs that the current stalemate in the ceasefire may be resolved in the coming days, but the long-term future of the truce remains in doubt.
Doctors in India say they have carried out successful surgery on a 17-year-old boy who was born with 2 extra legs attached to his stomach. The extremely rare medical condition can occur when twins are conceived, but the body of one doesn't develop and its organs or limbs get attached to the other child. Medics say only around 40 such cases have ever been recorded across the globe. Surgeons at Delhi's All India Institute of Medical Sciences described it as an extremely complex procedure that required experts from multiple departments. And that's the latest BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And Ellio Solomon, right here on Bobo FM, sitting in the studio, ladies and gentlemen, with Edie Thompson. Again, it's a good discussion here, chatting amongst other things, beach vending, lots of trash, lots of issues to discuss. And I'd like to just say something really quickly. You know, when you saw all of this, you talked about the fact that there's perhaps inadequate trash containers. You definitely think it's a bit of cultural diversity, issues. But what are some of your solutions? What do you see as some of the things that the government should and could be doing on the beaches to make things a bit better? Well, all over probably, but specifically the beaches for today.
I think that this applies to all public spaces.
I'm not sorry. One second. Austin, I don't know. I'm not hearing. It sounds to me I'm not really hearing Edi here.
Is this works any better?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. So I'm saying basically this applies to any government public beach. We are no longer a place that time forgot, and we seem to be using that same old model, the good old days. I think we need to be a little more proactive. Now, again, I'm going to be fair to those who are in charge of these departments and what have you. Is I don't know what the resources are given and for what they have to work with. But again, if we are going to be focusing on spending millions of dollars, then it needs to be a holistic approach on the whole thing. So for me here, it is a simple matter of designing the place to have proper garbage facilities so that even and on-site people who will empty the garbage cans intermittently, because let's face it, we're talking about thousands of tourists coming through there. And certainly at any one given time, probably a couple of hundred. I never counted the chairs, but I see that take up the whole beach. And so for me, one of the answers is putting a structure. Hey, I would for free happily design a general concept for it and just say, hey, this is my contribution. I was always taught to pay it forward by my former mentor. And so and at the end of the day, it's my country. I take exception when they expect me to do everything, but I'm happy to volunteer. And so in this particular case, it's a combination. I mean, we have these what I refer to as vertical coffins. That was the most, in my opinion, and I seem to have got a lot of support for it, the most ill-conceived vendor booths that were there. That
those kiosks they refer to.
Is that what? Call it what you want.
Vertical coffin, I think, is a fantastic description because it's about the size of one.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would store in there except a body.
Yeah.
Vertically.
Yeah.
And probably saying the concept should be buried.
And so yeah, obviously to sell trinkets here and there, you can hang stuff on the wall. But the reality is, and again, this is not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
Go any town, any place, and that is in the tourism business, and you will see it. Yeah. You will see cabanas or structures, whether they're mobile food trucks, and you can create a certain vibe with that. And this is not what I'm saying to implement. I'm just saying these are things you've seen out there. There are places where they do the huts that you can actually use a shipping container, wrap it to make it look like a little Cayman-style cottage.
Yeah.
And you put a dividing wall down in it. One side is selling local fruits. The other side is selling tourist trinkets.
Yeah.
But if it's not made here, then why sell trinkets that are imported from China or what have you? Mm-hmm. You're trying to create a local feel. So thatch ropes and straw hats and what have you. Those are the kind of things you want.
Sure.
Not everybody's going to buy them, but you got some there, and of course you got your obligatory T-shirts and what have you with the Cayman Islands. That of course you can import. But the point being is structure and hygienic locations for the serving and dispensing of foods, not just fruits and what have you that we can produce from the farms, but at the same time cooking food. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing hygienic there at all, but we have a whole bunch of what we would call barbecue grills that's just sitting out there ad hoc. People could easily get burnt on them like children, not knowing better. It's just no structure. It's complete archaic setup.
Absolutely.
So that's some of my thoughts, and I'm happy to succinctly put them out on a overall concept plan. But
I want to pick up on something you said at the very beginning, and you drew an analogy between what is not happening at the beach versus what is happening, in particular to tour bus or taxi operators along the waterfront. I don't suspect, I know for a fact, it was very much a free-for-all environment. But now if you apply for a bus or a taxi, particularly operating on cruise ship days, there is a standard.
Absolutely.
One of the courses all operators have to go through, I think it's called the Tourism Ambassador course or something like that. But forgive me, I don't...
Something to that effect,
I don't have the specific name, but basically you go through a course and that educates you on, sites and, historical landmarks that you would otherwise share as a bus or taxi driver with your visitors. Some important cultural tidbits of information. So again, they're not just taxi operators, but they are tourism ambassadors who are also providing a service, which I think is fantastic. The standardization offers them an education course. If you obviously complete the course, you get a polo shirt, so now there's uniformity, right? All drivers, they all have the ambassador logo on the chest. And again, it fits a standard, a rule that applies to everyone.
Absolutely.
You either meet this, if you meet this standard, then by all means, if there's room in inventory for another business or vendor, then that space is yours.
Yeah.
And again, like the beach vendor situation, taxi and tour operators are Caymanians only as well. You can't get a license to drive these vehicles or to own a company unless you're Caymanian. But in the absence of structure, you're going to have chaos. And that's what we absolutely had in the first instance. So I think I'd agree with you in that regard.
And to that point, I mean, we had an issue a couple of days ago where, we had some part of it that was being held up by one of the officers there with the bus they were driving, windows open, no AC, etc. Again,
Didn't meet the minimum
kudos
standards.
to them. I mean, you need the
We
standards.
talked about it. It was the incident that also went viral on social media where the public transport unit, PTU inspector, came down hard on a bus driver for simply that, not maintaining the standards that apply to the license in which you agreed to operate under.
Absolutely.
And it's a situation is, you cannot have it your way. It is a rule that is across the board for everybody to create that balance and structure. And the point that you made, Cayman is not for everybody. And it never has been for everybody. And Cayman has always been different in terms of its offering than the rest of the Caribbean. Perhaps because we recognize what you also made is that there are lots of white sandy beaches and crystal clear waters across the Caribbean. What sets Cayman apart from the rest of the Caribbean? There are certain standards, and that's always been us, and I don't think we have a reason to apologize for it. But the other point that I think is hard to not recognize from your videos and from bringing awareness to this issue is there has been episodal reaction from the authorities in the sense that when your videos first went out, it obviously captivated the attention of masses, including our would-be government, politicians, administrators, and the like, and they swooped down. Full court press, the Public Lands Commission was there. You have the police there, both the Marine unit and those officers, on foot. I believe there have been one or two raids that also have occurred on a sporadic basis. But there is no consistent effort.
Because there's no framework.
To get this message across, it is just simply not good enough.
Yep.
And to your point, you have between 4,000 and 5,000 visitors on a public beach. Let's forget about the locals for a second.
Exactly.
Let's think about, our bread and butter, the people who are paying money to be here. Visitors on a public beach, and there's not a cop anywhere.
Exactly.
There's simple things. A lot of things can happen. That's why they're called accidents. But there should be a presence.
Well, there is a reason why you see security officers at the cruise ports.
Yes.
There is security. We have to be honest and actually say, listen, none of us are perfect, and as being a human nature and everybody's struggling for that dollar, there's going to be strife, and there is also going to be conflict. And so there's been instances where we've had taxi operators or tour operators fighting amongst themselves. And so what do you happen? There's police constantly posted at the airports. There's police posted at the cruise ports. But then there's nothing once you get out of town. And it just makes no sense in terms of the overall structure. And it's because it is lacking an overall structure. But I would like to backtrack real quick because I want to make sure that the folks that are in this business understand this.
Yeah.
All of this training here, in my opinion, need not cost them 1 cent. Let's understand that these are not white-collar workers making, a whole lot of money per year. These are people who are trying to eke a living out for whatever reasons that they found themselves in, that all they can do is, sell some tourist trinkets here and there, and which is a good living, by the way. And any living that's an honest living is a good living.
Sure.
But let's also be honest. You're not walking around earning hundreds of thousands of dollars and getting, tens of thousands of dollar bonuses at the end of the year like many other white-collar workers are. So to me, this program should, any sort of training program is at no cost to these guys, right? We already do this with the small business license fees, where if it's a micro business, it's like a nominal fee of $75 or whatever the case may be. These are the things we need to know because the cost of living is already high enough as it is, and these people are struggling as it is. So if you're going to spend the millions of dollars people get down here, you can pull out a chunk of that and put it into the training of these people who will then create the positive experience and become additional ambassadors to our product and our facilities.
Eddie, you also talked about, again, with all, particularly going back to the trash issue, you talked about enforcement. And tell us some of the things that you bring to the table there in terms of solution.
Well, yeah, again, it's coming back, sitting down again to the drawing board, so to speak, and just putting in a whole framework, putting in the proper infrastructure. There's no proper infrastructure. So we have literally, you go down to the local hardware store and you buy a 10-foot by 20-foot tent has a tarp on the top of it. After a few months of the sun beating down on it and the breeze blowing, the tarp wears away and it's raggedy, and they go and buy another one and strap around it. So you have rope tied up everywhere. You've got ropes holding the tent down to the ground. And then you got people cooking food underneath these things with no real hygienic facilities. And if you put those in place, yes, it costs a few dollars here and there, but also too, it's not hard. We have 2 multi-million-dollar high-end hotels surrounding this property, even though it is a public beach. And I do believe that we also have facilities where, or a situation where we can be creative and solicit the private sector for sponsorships of certain, of implementing this infrastructure.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's the government's obligation if it's a public beach. So you put these things in for fairly limited costs. I'm not talking brick and mortar. I'm talking about modular systems. Like you can even get a shipping container, like I said, put it on, and there's so many things so many ways you can modify these things at a very, very low cost. But it ends up being wrapped. You'd never know it's a shipping container. I've seen it in Tampa. I've seen it in Miami. I've seen it in New York City on the piers. I've seen it in Spain. I've seen it in London, Paris.
Yeah.
On the Champs-Elysees. I've seen these things, and they are actually literally shipping containers.
I keep an eye on him. He's a Spaniard. So
Speaking Spanish.
Yeah, habla español.
He's a globetrotter. He's a world traveler.
Eddie also talked about, you talked about lifeguards. You talked about persons on like officers and ARV being able to even arrest. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Can we actually ask you to hold that thought? We do have a caller on the line. I want to see if we can get our listeners involved.
While we talk trash. Sure.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Austin. Good evening, Ellio. And if my memory serves me well, that is a good friend of mine on the radio, but I don't want to make any mistakes with the name. Who's the guest?
Eddie Thompson.
Eddie Thompson, yeah.
Eddie, I figured that. Hi, this is Minister Brian. I just thought I would chime in if I'm allowed to, because it's a hot topic in respect to tourism-related matters.
By all means, Minister, share your thoughts.
So I hope to be involved in the conversation with the potential back and forth if that is available to the discussion, because I do agree a lot with a lot of the points that Eddie has made, but sometimes there's a lot of unfortunate nuances in the background that create the hurdles and the creation of what we have there, from a lot of the bureaucracy of the legal grounds of those persons who are tenants there, from past agreements of the previous administration of persons having license before. To be honest, I was not in support of allowing it, but, Cabinet is bound by collective responsibility. I wasn't necessarily in full support. I didn't think it was a good idea to share the space between business and our local beach. But it is what it is. We decided to go forward, try to put in a process of fairness, and then you have persons who had legal tenure from before we created the policy, which created another headache. Then you also had people who are challenged it in court, and then the court tells you you can't do anything until the case is over. That's why a lot of people don't know this behind the scenes, but the Public Lands Commission was told they cannot remove anybody or do anything until these legal challenges are resolved. And of course, Eddie, when you do videos like that, I'm going to respond and say, okay, guys, what is going on? Why does this look this way? Even though I'm not in charge of lands, it looks bad on me as Minister of Tourism, because everybody thinks it's my responsibility, or it falls under my constitutional responsibility as minister, but it falls on the land. So when we found out what was going on, it's more legal bureaucracy than anything else stopping us from being able to do like what Eddie says and take it under control, because he's right. You have two amazing properties next door. But you build all of this infrastructure in a perfect world, like you said, like other Caribbean islands do. Then the community will, hold on, is this my public beach anymore? Or you take it away from me? And those are one of the concerns I had. Just to tap on the whole training component. Training is offered to individuals who operate in the tourism space. But sometimes I tell you, no matter how much training you give a person, their behavior and their own personal attitude will come out. You know what I mean? Like, I know growing up as a Caymanian, as a generational Caymanian, there's certain things we would not do because they were just not in our culture. But we have a makeup of a lot of different nationalities now who are Caymanian, who don't behave the way that we do. But that's one component. But the infrastructure, he's 100% right. Because I even argued with legal about, okay, while we're waiting on the courts to decide who can be there and who can't be there and all that, we can't be allowing, half rotten down tents to be there. And I got in a legal argument with the AG about this to say this can't be right. The courts can't hold us up from at least making the place look decent, because I could not argue with anybody about that position. I mean, it just looks terrible. It's not the Cayman brand, but trust me, there's so many things that happen in government that is caught up in bureaucracy and our constitutional rights that we constantly hear in every court case every day, the right of the people. And of course, we want to protect that. But people are abusing it so much that we feel paralyzed to be able to take control of any situation.
Minister, how would you respond to the fact that, like Eddie said, that there weren't even, in his opinion, adequate trash cans, for example, there on the beaches?
And still not.
Yeah, agreed.
It sounds like something that could be reasonably. And who is responsible for that? Like recreation and parks or whatever?
Well, I'm not in. I don't want to try to put any blame on anybody. I'm a leader in cabinet, so I'll take full responsibility for anything that's happening, because I don't believe in placing blame. But we did recognize just recently that maybe Public Works or Public Lands Commission should work along with the Department of Environmental Health to do a more frequent turnover. So one of the feelings that did happen is that when we created this policy, which allowed for more traffic on a regular basis to be there. So obviously before the policy happened, you'll probably get a couple of people here or there going, and then the rotation of garbage collection was sufficient. But then you, by a stroke of a pen, create a policy, allowed all of these tourists to start coming down there, and nobody examined the garbage collection because it wouldn't fall under Public Lands Commission. And that's when you start to see that, hold on, who picked up the garbage or who's doing that? And obviously the vendors are not are going, well, can I get somebody from DEH to do that? So I think he's right to say that we did not do a good job of monitoring on a regular basis while you change something to fix the little nuances that come along with it. Even if you missed it, who's monitoring it to make sure that, we got a lot more traffic now, that means we have to adjust the garbage collection. So it is a failure. I'm not even going to pretend because it reflects on me as Minister of Tourism, even though I'm not in charge of the public lands which the public beach falls under.
Right.
But we have talked about it. We've talked with the minister responsible for DEH. We've spoken to the minister responsible for public works, whose public works workers on the Parks and Recreation does the cleanup of the beach. And I know that they are in the process of now re-examining the scheduling for cleanup, not only cleanup for the garbage collection, but cleanup of the beach, because, they go every morning and rake up and stuff like that. So Mr. Thompson is 100% right. We could do better, but in respect to the public beach is a very unique situation from previous administration agreements. Even before the Progressives, the government before that, there were people who were given letters of tenure, and then you try to create a policy to say, okay, everybody has a fair, equal chance to get it, and then if that person isn't selected who was given a letter from 8 years ago, then they'll go, I'm taking you to court. I was given a permission to be here from the previous government, and then it just ends up in a lot of court proceedings, and the court can order a stay in any action by the Public Lands Commission and their officers. I tell you, I've even spoken to the officers, and they feel paralyzed to say the courts have told us we can't do anything until we figure this out. And I'm going, yeah, while I'm sitting here being beaten politically, but more importantly, the product looks bad because we can't do anything. And these are some of the bureaucracy that I really want to get a handle on. That will allow us to have a better product, because she's right, it's not sufficient.
Yeah,
Minister, if I could just jump in and take you back to how you started. You suggested that when this issue first came to light, it was your position not to support having beach vendors on beaches in the first place, but begrudgingly you went on with it because obviously your cabinet colleagues had a separate idea or notion.
Different view, yeah.
And to your last point, are you suggesting that whilst the courts prohibited the government or authorities from removing persons from that site until certain court proceedings took place, they also tied your hands in terms of implementing standards, whether it be for trash or usage of the property? Is that correct?
No, there are standards. There are standards in the policy now, but that's on the individual tenant. They have to carry out themselves in a particular way. They can't do.
Who enforces those standards?
Yeah.
So the public lands commission officers have a right to go down there for those who are licensed. But what you have is some people who are there operating and still have the authority under the courts to be there, but they are not licensed. So the public lands commission officers can't penalize somebody who actually doesn't have a license, but the law can't move them.
Yeah.
So I think you see my point. So it is. How can you tell a public officer to say to do what? Take away a license that they don't have?
You can't.
I wonder, Minister, if you could speak very quickly, because we're almost out of time right here now on this particular topic. But you know, I think enforcement's an issue, right? There's people throwing trash in different areas. I've given my own example on the station. But I don't know if anyone really getting a proper fine. I mean, you keep hearing about up to $500 for throwing trash, but it happens every day. Any idea, whether it's the beach or not, any idea what's being done in terms of enforcement? I gave an example where I know I called police officers for someone who admitted throwing trash. They're not taken downtown. They're not even given a $10 fine.
Well, the enforcement arm, which is things to take them to court, is for the police. And as you know, under this Constitution, the police falls under the deputy governor and the governor of the Cayman Islands. So we scream and shout as politicians to do the enforcement arm all the time. And the responses that we get is, it's hard to prove a person littering.
All right. I know one that admitted it. Wow. Still nothing happened.
Wow.
Minister, and that's the question. If someone who has admitted it to the police and the police didn't take them to court, that doesn't shine good on us. But we only have so much authority in respect to the police component. Both members there, Austin and Ellio, you know that. As per our authority is to fund the police. We cannot dictate to the police what to do, or the DPP's office. So I don't want to undermine the police because they
yeah, but you know, sorry to cut you, but we're just saying it as it is, and I know Mr. Ada wants to say something before we go, but speaking about tourism, this is everywhere. I mean, I go all over the place around the island. I love to be able to sit in my car and eat food, and everywhere in this country is just being littered with trash, and nothing's happening about it.
So, Minister, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for calling in, and I really appreciate it. And I got to tell you, you are probably one of very, very few, if not the only, in certain recent times, who is willing to come in and take the heat. And for that, I take my hat off. Absolutely. Every time. You have my utmost respect for that. And I know you have great intentions for this, and you certainly, and your hands are tied in many instances. And I also acknowledge that it's easy to be Monday night quarterback, after the Sunday's game, talking what could have been done, should have been done, how would have been done. But the reality is that there is, in my view, and I say this because I'm seeing this happening globally, and it has happened in the past before. One of our national heroes was actually had a big reputation for it. And you have to be creative in the ways you're now implementing or enforcing laws and putting in new laws. And one of the ways is the CBC DOE officers in the past could not fine people. Now they have been given the power to do so. So if that needs to happen to the of the Parks and Recreations, then you give them those authorities. And then just like how police before, when you got a speeding ticket, you had to show up for court. Now we have an option to say, okay, yeah, we were wrong. We're not going to fight this. We're going to go ahead and pay the fine. These things need to happen where they can walk out and issue a fine. But at the end of the day, before we can do all of that, and it does not take much effort, is to literally put in a proper infrastructure and plan on how it operates on that beach. And these are the requirements for you to operate here. Period. End of story. And then you also challenge the courts, because that's happening now. Look around the place. People are tired of the tiptoeing and walking around and actually being put out. And even if it is, they have to say this is for national interest. Because at the end of the day, when you're telling me you're spending my tax money in the tens of millions of dollars to bring people here, to then have a terrible experience like a lot of people have had there, we are that's an exercise in futility and in fact defeat. Yep. And the final end. So we could, even if it is that you have to be that creative with the courts to say this is a national issue, and under section whatever it is under that national issue, this is we're taking emergency actions and we're going to implement new policies and procedures and move forward from there. That's just my humble suggestion. I'm not saying that it will, that I'm right. I'm just saying we just cannot approach it the way we've been approaching it all these years, because clearly that has proven not to be as successful.
Minister, an opportunity to respond, and just want to say to you, we have other callers on the line, so but please, an opportunity to respond.
Thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate it. And Eddie, you're not saying that you're right, but I'll say it for you. You are 100% right. And that is exactly one of the reasons why I made a significant choice yesterday to join a group that is going to be cohesive in its approach. Because you don't know how many times that I've tried myself, even another member who was a part of the beautification, that was a part of my ministry, tried very, very hard about enforcement in respect to cleanup. And I couldn't get enough support collectively to come more forceful with beautification. And the only how you're going to get that is if you have a cohesive government. That's why these are small reasons why I made the decision to join the party. But I'll stop there because I know you have other callers. But Eddie, thank you so much. Keep the pressure on my brother, regardless if it's the pressure on me, because the only thing that we can do is get better as a country. So I appreciate your thoughts, and I'll be listening to the rest of the show. God bless you all.
I appreciate your input.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you very much, Minister Bryan, for those comments and remarks. And whilst he's not on the line, but I hear his challenges, and certainly he's right. There are things that politicians get blamed for that they have no control over. But on the issue of trash,
you know that, Austin.
Yeah, we both.
You know that very well, Austin.
We both know that. But on the issue of trash, by all means, I would think there would be a component within his tourism ministry that would allow him to set certain criteria over and above DEH and otherwise, so that he would have some authority. But we do have a caller in the line. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Harris. David Lyons here. How are you doing?
Oh, good evening, Mr. Lyons. One of the vendors themselves calling in. Thank you for your call.
Well, someone has to defend us.
All right. The floor is yours.
So, first of all, we're not responsible for the rubbish fines, but we pick up rubbish every day. It's not just, and I wouldn't say that it's the vendors that leave rubbish, because we clean up in the evening. Sometimes I go there in the morning after cleaning in the evening and still have to clean garbage off the beach because of those that went there.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we lost you for a second.
Yes, I said we clean the garbage. We take garbage bags. We pick the garbage up every evening. And some mornings I go back and find garbage. That's one issue. The second issue is Mr. Thompson was saying about the lifeguard stands. You yourself know I've been recommending that to those that are in charge for years.
Yes.
Okay. Not every vendor there at this point in time is trouble. And everything has changed from what it was before, because it was really a clown show before. It's a lot better now than it was, because we have public lands out there 24/7. We have the police force out there 24/7. So, a lot has changed.
Well, that last point is relatively new, because I don't think people are aware that the police and public lands are there 24/7, because that, even after the Public Lands Commission got involved, created the vendor application process, and with that, the appeals process, which, again, to your point, was chaos before that. But we recall there being sort of an episodic response from the authorities. Only when things got bad or found themselves in the headline did we see a cop on the beach, did we see a public lands officer on the beach. But you're telling us both of those units are there all the time now. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
All right. Well, that's one point of clarification.
I'd like to respond just real quick because I want to make sure that you have your say, but let me clarify that yes, that you can't paint everybody with the same brush, but unfortunately, there's a situation where you can become guilty by association in any industry, and I'm actually glad to hear that you've been advocating and agitating for change inside there. And as you will note, if you're listening to everything I've said, is actually putting in proper structure, proper infrastructure, and procedures, and that makes your life easier for you, therefore, to make a living and do what you got to do without having to deal with the other lawless or unscrupulous vendors that are there making your life difficult trying to make an honest living. So I will say this. I'd never like to paint everybody with the same brush, because that's obviously not the case. And I'm actually loving the fact that you come out and articulating all of this, because it's saying that you have been agitating for a lifeguard and other things to happen. That means somebody's not picking it up. And I will take this quick opportunity to actually call out the deputy governor, and because he's in charge of the civil service, and just say, listen, you're talking about world-class civil service. It applies across the board, and not by everybody's perfect, and you can make that move. But I hope he's listening, or I hope those who do listen pass it on to him, so that he can assist you in making your life easier and offering a better product for our tourists, and making our islands look the way we would like it to be portrayed.
Right. After I seen your video, I could completely understand, and I agree with what you're saying about the area over next to the restrooms. Right? They should just throw those tents away and get new ones if that's the case. But their hands were tied because they were only allowed, or we're only allowed pop-up tents. Right? Because you park out and park in every day, but those tents don't park in and park out every day.
Correct.
Right. So that's what happened with that situation. Also, as Minister Bryan stated about those of us that were there from before, I will go on to say that none of this circus would have been going on once the first 16 were approved to be there if they were protected. But everyone else was allowed to come along and do what they wanted to do. You agree, Mr. Harris? You've been out there, you've seen it.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Again, the horse before the cart. They allowed something to happen without having any structure set in place first.
What was happening is people were already trading there. This has been from late 80s. People have been trading there. You had Captain Ron there with one banana boat and probably 200-300 chairs. Right? This is the next thing about the chairs, which I've found a solution for my chairs. I park them out the way and keep them out the way so you don't see them. They're not a complete eyesore. But the problem is, right now, you're only allowed a certain amount of chairs. Now tell me, if you have 18,000 people in port, and all those people cannot go to Turtle Farm, Stingray City, do the island tour to drive around, and they just demand the drivers to take them to the beach. They go to the beach. Not all of them want chairs and umbrellas, and there is an area designated for those people. Okay?
Correct.
But majority of people want chairs and umbrellas. Even if they don't want a chair, they want umbrella. And of course, they want beers, they want drinks. But not Bonnie Moon is open now, so I recommend most people to go over there because I'm the closest vendor to Bonnie Moon.
Okay.
Right? So I use that to my advantage. Hey guys, the bar and restaurant's right there.
And that's a very well run establishment.
Well, for sure.
There you go.
For sure.
And structure. I do feel for you, caller. Let me just say, I do feel for you and your frustrations as as one who's trying to make an honest living and make it work there. But again, like everything else, like the Sandbar, Stingray cities, everything has a maximum capacity, and everything has to be done in a way that not just the tourists but even the locals can enjoy it. So when I'm physically threatened by a chair vendor or somebody else because I'm sitting too close to their chairs, or I'm sitting where they want to put a chair that they can sell. These are the issues. So I'm glad to hear that they've at least stepped it up and have now implemented or insist on having a presence of police officers. But again, these are people that need to have the training and the infrastructure that needs to put in place. I think now that they have what they've created or allowed to be created inside there, it is a place where we do Norseca, the beach volleyball tournaments. You have the beach football tournaments. You can have all of these different things. So if you put in very cost-effective infrastructure for the trade of food, the selling of food and trinkets and what have you, and the chairs and everything else, when you put all of that place and it's put in a proper working order, it actually could then generate the revenue to pay for the maintenance of that overall area. But I would also be hastened to say that anything that's put there for merchants would be at a limited basis, because at the end of the day, we want it to be what it should be, and that is a place where you can go and relax and enjoy our beautiful waters and sandy beaches, and that's not the case right now.
Well, I will tell you this. On a Saturday or a Sunday, you have a lot of locals that come out there and they rent chairs or umbrellas because they don't want to be under the cabana. It's too far from the water, and they want to, as we say, play dry land tourists too.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely, and I'm not saying that they don't and that they shouldn't have chairs. What I'm saying is it can't be corner to post chairs where you can barely get to the water. What I'm saying to you is we have a
no,
and then you go from there. So we can't give everything. Everybody can't have everything they want. But again, to your point, there has to be a system, and I think you would agree that if you had a system by which everybody was abiding by, your life would be easier, and we would move on from there, and we can implement these things in different public beaches, because that's not the only public beach. And so a master plan, again, national development plan, master transportation plan, all of these things have to be done together. So to Mr. Kenneth's point, he has joined an organization or a political party now for cohesion and see if we can get things to be better. Full disclosure, I am fully supporting the Cayman Islands National Party. I am not a candidate. I will not be a candidate. But I have looked around and I said, you know what? The successive governments have shown me that they can't get things done here. And there's a new group of people here that are very capable, accomplished. Some of them have come out of retirement, and they're offering a different idea. So my whole thing is I'm supporting this. Just like Minister Bryant thinks he can get it done there, I think I have a better group there that I'm going to support. So that's a shameless plug.
Yeah, it is a shameless plug. Caller, an opportunity to wrap up some thoughts.
That is shameless.
Caller?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting election, and we'll see what happens. But politics is politics, and I just wish that our politics.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please, the floor is yours to wrap up.
So, well, in wrapping up, you were speaking about politics, and I was saying that I wish the politicians that we have in this country, or those that plan to run for politics in future, would have some backbone and cojones.
Thank you.
Look out for their own. Mm-hmm. Look out for their own first. Yeah. And there's a lot more to straighten out than the 7 Mile Public Beach, but that's for another show.
Absolutely.
Okay,
all right.
Good. We'll stay tuned for that show.
And thank you for your call, and I appreciate your honest feedback, and it's greatly appreciated, and thank you for your efforts in trying to get it done the right way.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, the caller was being critical that, no one's coming to their defense, and I just want to say to him that, we have a guest in studios, and we wanted to hear his thoughts, but certainly I wouldn't have ended the conversation without interjecting that, which I know firsthand. The last caller has become the unofficial spokesperson for the vendors. He has been out front. He has been at the forefront of the legal challenges. He has been organizing. He has been, I think both of you are singing from the same hymn book, because you both want the same thing.
Absolutely.
He's a Caymanian vendor who has been operating on the beach from before it became the in thing to do, and certainly became the popular beach for cruise tourists. You will recall prior to Public Beach, you had Beach Club. Before it closed or got knocked down or whatever, that was where tourists congregated.
Yeah.
But after their disappearance from the scene, Public Beach then obviously garnered that support. And all that is being said here is that it's not a question of is there a place for beach vendors in our overall tourism product, but there should be a standard.
Absolutely.
And that standard should also
a high standard.
A very high standard, because this is our tourism product.
Absolutely.
This is the face that we're sharing with the visitor. And things like trash, which have gotten worse, not just on the beach, but everywhere you look. And that is a new phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
But until our laws are enforced, I think both the caller and the guest agree with that. But likewise, like we've seen in taxi and bus operators, you want to operate in this space? Here's the standard that you need to, achieve. And if you can do that, then it is fair game. And of course, as you pointed out, a much better working environment for everyone, because now you're part of a wider, larger team. Whilst running your business, you are part of Cayman's tourism product, and that's what we want to see.
Absolutely.
745-2626 is the number, or you can share your thoughts either via WhatsApp, 928-2562. You can send us a WhatsApp message, or you can send us a voice note. We'll be glad to hear from you there. We do have another caller on the line as we say that. Let's see if we can go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Austin.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ellio.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, this is Leon Gold.
Hello, Mr. Gold. Day for the politicians today. How are you, sir?
He's
Coming out the woodworks.
It's Leon. He's as good as gold.
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought this was an interesting conversation. And I want to share my 2 cents on it.
Please do.
Sure.
One of the issues I think that we have is that we are throwing everything at the 7 Mile Public Beach. Grand Cayman has several other beautiful beaches that can be used for tourists or tourism purposes. We are ignoring the rest of the island and pushing everything on the 7 Mile Beach. Why isn't the government supporting businesses that would like to be established in other locations? And the whole, I'm not a minister like Minister Brian, so I can speak freely on the Public Lands Commission. And my experience with them has not been the greatest, to say the least.
Okay.
I applied for a liquor license to serve liquor on the 7 Mile Beach back in 2023, September to be specific. My license was approved by the liquor board, and to date, I have been unable to use the license. It was expired in September 2024, and I did not get permission from the Public Lands Commission for a vendor's permit.
I see.
What is happening down there is being overrun by foreigners. And I can call it what it is. This type of work is something that should be spared for Caymanians. They say Caymanians are not educated. They say we're not qualified. They say we're not equipped for the workforce. Well, these vendor positions are jobs that could be suitable for these unqualified, incapable, as what we refer to, type of people. It doesn't take a qualification to be a vendor on the beach. Right? Give the people that are not qualified, unskilled, if you would call them that, people, the opportunity to work down there. We had a good food vendor down there, Murph's Kitchen, which, if I'm correct, was owned by a Caymanian. They were removed. They had to leave the beach. And they were one of the first people down there serving food.
Right.
They got kicked off. Right? They had a proper food facility with sanitary ways to produce food. Sanitary, right? A proper built food truck. They wasn't cooking from the back of a car or backing pots and pans with them, right?
Yeah.
And they were kicked off the beach. So, and in regards to alcohol, there's people serving liquor down there every single day of the week, illegal.
Yeah.
Right? Selling weed, selling liquor, selling everything under the pumps behind some bushes.
Mm-hmm.
But when a Cayman get up and say, oh, let me do it the right way, it's a big wall in front of your face.
Right.
Now, we got to refer people to Bonnie Moon. Bonnie Moon is a huge establishment owned by Dark. Right? Why can't a Caymanian have a license to serve liquor out there? Why it has to be Dark collecting all the revenue? And not even one. We could have several Caymanians offering the service down there to make $1. Yeah. But they're against it.
Well, I just want to pick you up, Mr. Gould, on that comment that it's all foreigners on the beach, which I have to challenge. I mean, the water sports operators are all Caymanians owned and in large case operated. A lot of young kids are the ones working for these Caymanian water sports operators. A lot of the chair companies, and I think there's only two of them, the last caller, who's probably on the small end, and the major chair provider, which is also a Caymanian lady. I think she may have a Jamaican national putting the chairs out, but it's a Caymanian-owned company. I can't agree with you that it is
but listen
foreign-led.
You're right to an extent.
Okay.
But they're the licensed people, the people that are permitted to do this business down there you're referring to.
Yes.
But what you're maybe unaware of is that there are many people that are doing business down there unlicensed, unregistered.
Oh yes. No,
right?
I agree. I acknowledge that. And that's the problem.
And that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, I thank you for that correction. I appreciate it.
And I understand that the Public Lands Commission is trying. I know they've been there, like Mr. Lyons said, they've been there a lot, and they've been working trying to keep things regulated. And we do have some good Caymanians like Mr. Lyons and some other guys down there that doing the chairs and stuff like that actually care about the product.
Yes.
Right? And they're putting all the effort in it because this is their livelihoods. So they're putting in the effort to represent Cayman in the proper form. But then we have some hooligans that come, right? They're selling, if you take out, I urge you guys, the best way for you to understand this is to take a walk down there on a busy cruise ship day.
Yeah.
Go and look for yourself at the disaster that's happening down there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
But if they are illegal, then and there's police there 24/7 now, why aren't they then discharging their duties?
Correct.
They come there. The police do arrest people as well. Police do arrest people, and it's been frequent arrests happening, but it's a persistent problem with the ganja selling and the liquor selling and all that. But where there's a demand, there'll be supply. Right. So people are there constantly looking for drinks. Like Mr. Lyons said, people come up, they want a beer to drink. And can you imagine? We live on an island with one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and you can't get off that tour bus or taxi or whatever it is, and you cannot go and just walk on the beach and buy a beer to relax. You have to go down to Bonnie Moon and spend $10 to buy a beer. I mean, which Caribbean nation have you ever been to where it's illegal to sell liquor on the beach?
Probably most, but at least it's controlled, and that's the idea. There's no infrastructure, and what you're promoting is to have proper structure in place, which is what I was also saying.
Yeah.
To ensure
but they don't even want
the proper dispensation and consumption of these drinks.
But Mr. Powell, they don't even want that because when you go through the right channels, I drafted a large scale proposal, right? Everything would have been, purpose built to serve drinks and food as well. Purpose built from the ground up. And they turned it down, right? As a Caymanian, I put in a ton of effort, and it got to the point that the person that was invested in me decided to pull out because it took about 6 months to get the liquor license approved and permission from the environmental health. All that was approved, get the public lands, and you back up in a wall.
Right.
Because there's a gray area in the law, or in the policy, I should say, that says liquor shall only be served on occasional basis on the beach. Which can be argued because I was only intending on being there on an occasional basis, which is when the cruise ships went down.
Yeah.
But they said, oh no, it's like an event, like maybe Badabano or something like that. You could do it, or one-off event.
I see.
Right? So there needs to be some amendments made to these policies. And like Mr. Powell said, you know, we need a proper infrastructure in place down there. And enforcement is something that's lacking.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Right?
Caller, I'm going to ask you to leave us there. Certainly do appreciate your comments. Mr. Thompson, you got 2 minutes left. I wanted to see if you can perhaps wrap up your thoughts on, you know, this subject and the viewpoints of our listeners.
Yeah, and just before you jump into that, I definitely want to summarize and stuff as well. I just want to thank again Mr. Leon Gold for calling in. Greatly appreciated. I know we understand he's running for the constituents of Red Bay, and we wish him the best of luck. So, Mr. Thompson, to get it right, thank you again very much for coming in the studio. I'd like you to just, as my colleague said.
I wasn't kicking him out. I was just asking him to wrap up this aspect of the conversation. I thought he wanted to.
I thought we were overtime.
I'm happy to engage in any other subjects. But yeah, to finalize on this one there, I'm very happy to have heard some input from somebody who actually is on the beach there. But again, I'll just keep saying, infrastructure, put it in there. It's not big money. I know it's not big money. I know that the vertical coffins that were supposed to be kiosks were not, were done that way to not be big money. But we also have to be realistic with everything. Simultaneously, I just think that the government needs to be more forceful, even with the courts. I mean, we need to challenge some of these things. It's now being done worldwide, where political correctness is being thrown out the door because the masses are suffering for the few. We need to make this where it is equitable for all. And right now, it's only for the few that scream really loud. And so to me, I make no apologies in that. And then again, that's why I said I am supporting a whole new entity of political wannabes, because these other guys have shown me that they're not prepared to make that extra push. And there's some wonderful people there in our government. Let's be clear. I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, whether it's in our government or what have you. So with that, I'll leave it there.
All right. Well, we do have to pause. Check in with the top of the hour news from the BBC. The phone lines remain open at 745-2626. But Mr. Thompson will stick around with us and be back when we return right here for more Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today.
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care, located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Ukraine says a deal has been reached between Kiev and Washington on the joint exploitation of Ukraine's mineral resources. Details have not yet been made public, but reports suggest the US has dropped some of its more drastic demands. President Trump said he understood President Zelensky wanted to sign the agreement with him in Washington.
I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy. And It's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths.
It remains unclear whether Ukraine has secured the security guarantees that President Zelensky wanted. Israeli warplanes have struck multiple targets in Syria, including military positions south of the capital Damascus. Israel's defense minister confirmed the aerial bombardment, saying it was acting to defend its regional border. The strikes are believed to have struck the town of Kisweh, as well as the southern province of Deraa. It comes hours after Damascus called for Israel to withdraw from its incursion into Syrian territory. Large parts of Chile have been hit by an electricity outage, impacting the country's mining industry, transport sectors and leaving millions without power. Media reports say the world's largest copper mine is also without electricity. Olivia Noon reports.
The blackout is affecting large parts of the country and multiple industries. In the capital, Santiago, the metro has been evacuated and road traffic lights aren't working, leading to delays. Santiago's international airport says flights are operating but has told passengers to check with airlines. Hospitals and prisons across the country are on emergency generators. It's the worst blackout the country has seen in around 15 years. The government has ruled out a cyber attack. It says the outage is a result of a system failure. An emergency meeting is taking place and it's hoped power will be restored in the coming hours.
The Trump administration says it's to change the composition of the White House press corps. The White House spokeswoman, Caroline Leavitt, said more streaming services and voices from outside Washington would be invited to reflect the changing media landscape, though what she called the legacy media would still be given some limited space.
The White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not. But we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility.
The Correspondents Association said the move tore at the independence of a free press in the United States. It said in a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps. World News from the BBC. Britain is to fast-track planned increases in defence spending. The announcement comes 2 days before Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets President Trump, who has been demanding Europe contribute more towards its security. Spending will rise to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. The extra money comes at the cost of international development aid and has been condemned by humanitarian agencies. Washington has welcomed what it called a strong step. Reports from Sudan say a military plane has come down near the capital Khartoum. Details are still coming in, but some reports say senior army officers were on board the Antonov plane. It's not clear whether it was an accident or whether the aircraft was shot down. Over the coming week, it will be possible to see all 7 planets in the night sky at the same time. The rare phenomenon known as a planetary parade will be visible across the world for a few minutes after sunset between Tuesday and Friday. Palab Ghosh reports.
For weeks, we've been able to see as many as 6 planets in the night sky. Now this planetary parade has reached its climax, with Mercury also coming into view, completing the full set of the other planets in our solar system. All 7 planets will be visible for only a few more days, and the next time to see the spectacle so well again will be in 2040.
The US Space Agency says an asteroid believed to have had a small chance of colliding with the Earth in 7 years' time now poses no significant threat. Earlier this month, the football pitch-sized object was given a 3.1% chance of striking the planet in December 2032, potentially causing severe damage. The United States Supreme Court has overturned the conviction and ordered a retrial of an Oklahoma man who has spent more than 25 years on death row. During that time, Richard Glossip has eaten 3 last meals while awaiting execution for a 1997 murder he says he did not commit. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, and myself, Ellio Solomon. It's a wonderful discussion with none other than Edith Thompson right here in the studio. The phone lines were definitely active. Amongst other things, we had the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, Deputy Premier. We had Mr. Leon Gold.
Yes.
And, of course, we had Mr. David Lyons himself. And, again, I think I can say that. He said it on the air as well.
Yes.
But we still have Mr. Thompson here in the studio, and we want to just transition a little bit. I think you wanted to offer up some comments on one of these videos that have been circulating on social media today, particular persons huddling, trying to get out of the reins.
Well, I mean, my nature being a designer in itself, these are things that I will always
sticks out at you.
Yeah, it'll always be drawn to in that regard. And
pardon the pun, drawn.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, it's a scenario where it comes back to, it follows on from the conversation we were having: proper infrastructure, proper planning, and so I'm presuming that it's going semi-viral at a bare minimum, where we had some beautiful liquid sunshine, as some people have referred to in the past, some good rains. I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But there was some tourists and tour operators who were being hindered by it because lack of proper facilities on the cruise port and at the airport and these things. I presume that they were having the same problems at the airport if flights were coming in. And again, the point being is if we're saying we're a number one destination because we are top quality, then why are we not offering such?
Indeed. And
Mr. So Thompson, I got to tell you, I would feel, and I got to say, I am a self-appointed ambassador of the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
I have been blessed and been able to travel in many places, Europe and in North America, from east to west. And I'll tell you, and even when I meet them here, and a lot of my clients have been North American and Europeans, as well as my fellow Caymanians. But when I do meet someone new to the island, I always say, "Welcome to my island," and they go, "Oh, you're premier as well."
Yeah. But Ellio is our self-appointed king, so we'll turn you into a knight before you leave here.
I did not know this.
You are Your Majesty.
You're making me a target, Austin.
You are Your Majesty.
We'll have to consult Lord Graham.
But you know, we'll get him on.
I say all that to say that I always take great pride in welcoming people to these islands. But oftentimes the first comments are like, you guys are really, really, really expensive. And you're not offering a lot of the stuff that I can get elsewhere, and my dollar's a lot stronger in these other destinations.
Mm-hmm.
And to which my quick retort would be is, well, yeah, but we're a lot safer and have a much better infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's really getting much harder to say that these days with a straight face.
Sure it is. To your point, tourists are paying top dollar. We are not the cheapest destination on the Caribbean region. We are not a value budget discount jurisdiction, and we've never have been.
No.
That's why we say Cayman is not for everybody.
Exactly, and that's what we have to embrace.
But we also have to acknowledge we've been selling 4 and 5 star, but what do we have to deliver that's even at that level?
Our product is 2-star, 2.5 star, 3-star in some instances. And that comes from our National Development Plan, Master Transportation Plan, tourism plan. And this whole thing of these different governmental departments not talking to each other is unacceptable.
Yes.
It is absolutely unacceptable.
That's happening on everything, pretty much.
Put this in perspective. My son went to USF. Mm-hmm. Their population is around 80,000, right? Yes. Or no, 40,000, somewhere thereabouts. Mind you, this has been up quite a few years already, and I'm aging myself.
And we all, buddy.
And the point, the thing that struck me was that this entire campus was policed with less than 100 officers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then there was also, and granted, it's a business and a university, but there was also no nonsense policies in place, and there was exact procedures, and it made the wheels turn easier. And again, we have to stop making, room for those few that cry the loudest. If it does not benefit the masses, it cannot just be for the select few. Yes. And that has always been my position. So to not have proper infrastructure for this port and at the airport as well, and even in the Georgetown beautification, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's another subject that I want to
before you jump into that.
Comment on that.
Before you jump into that, you can't let me not comment about the port. Okay?
No.
Okay, great.
Can't do that.
I mean, I have said, I had the benefit. Again, Aiden and I talked about the fact that he and I went to school together. But one of the things I've stressed publicly before is that I used to work on those tenders. I used to work on the tenders when I was very young.
Right. Yeah.
And it was one of the ways, hey, I guaranteed lunch money and money to buy other things. But to think of the fact that I remember back then when it would rain, I would feel embarrassed, even though, again, I didn't have any sphere of influence over the weather, but it was the same situation. And just to make sure I highlight it completely for the persons who are completely oblivious to what exactly Mr. Thompson's talking about, there was a video with the tourists, really trying to get up under one tent to get away from this rain.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, it looks like it was raining cats and dogs, as they say, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to consider that here I am 40-something years later, and arguably nothing has changed. I know Mr. Moska, Colonel, again, he stepped away now from the politics, but he talked about providing a first-class service, both at our airport and our seaport. Well, we could argue that neither one is given a first-class service, but I would like to say the airport is much more first-class than what we're getting right now at the port.
Yes.
And honestly, I really think it is so un-Caymanian. We talk about Caymankind. I think it's un-Caymanian. It cannot be acceptable to Caymanians what we have happening at the port.
Yeah.
Not just what we saw today with respect to the rain, but it's the same thing, the cattle lines when it's the sun. I really think it's embarrassing. And either we should decide as a country that we want to be in this, and if we want to be in it, let's do it right.
The correct way.
If not, come the hell out of it. I mean, because this is just really bad. And one last thing to pick up on what Mr. Thompson said. Sure. I remember while I was in government, there was a gentleman came here. He was a multimillionaire, but he was into IT. And he walked around and he sat with me. I think he was staying somewhere around, what's that place? Sunshine Suites. And he said, Ellio, I'm going to tell you something honest. I know you're a representative, but let me just tell you something straight. He says, I walked around this island, and what I found is high prices. And he said, I don't want to use that word, but it's for special high intensive training is one of the acronyms. Service.
Yeah.
It's shitty service. And I felt bad about it. But, and so we really need to do better as a country. I just want to underscore what it is saying because it is absolutely correct and it's totally unacceptable. Either we crap or get off the pot. Either we do it right or we don't do it at all.
We shift gears. And let me be absolutely crystal clear here. I'm not even referencing the piers. That's a whole topic for a whole different day.
Just this, yeah.
This is just the receiving infrastructure for the tourist masses. So I don't want anybody to automatically assume or paint me with that brush.
Make you pro piers.
Yeah, no. I'm just talking about what we have now and how we accommodate those who come off the tenders and land on our shores, and as well as stepping off the planes and land in the airport. These things, there has to be more of a priority to it, and we can't say, well, of course we always have to say, well, we need the money. Where do we get the money from? And that's where we step back for these master plans. And there are, and the thing is, we don't have to go overseas. The biggest frustration for me is if you don't have a doctorate and PhD and everything else, well, who built this island?
Yes.
Who built this island?
Yeah.
We did.
Right.
We went away. We learned it. When I say we, our forefathers, and they saw what was there. They brought these ideas back. But we have now conditioned ourselves to even putting ourselves down going, well, we need this, but we can't do it.
We don't have a doctorate.
And I got to tell you, I don't subscribe to that. Back to the news that you opened up with in the morning, or these training programs and what's it, mentoring that they have there.
Career fair for the high schools.
Let me tell you, I'm not a book person, and most people know that just interacting with me. But I'm a tactical person.
Don't put yourself down. Can't have it. Won't allow it.
I'm a tactical person. Yeah. I learned to rebuild my race car engines because I watched my father when I was a kid used to doing these things. I looked and watched, and we learned this. Me and my brothers. I can design stuff because I was gifted with the ability to picture things in my head. But there's nothing more I hate than having to sit down and just read through paragraphs and paragraphs as lawyers do. So we all have these aptitudes, and so for me, we need to bring back in this whole things where people who are geared towards auto mechanics, they can go to the different service shops there, do an exchange program. And these people are still very brilliant. Yeah. There's a lot of people you'll see going out and oh, look at those kids running around those cars. These guys are tuning these cars with computers and everything else, but they have 0 degrees. And if you look at them, you think, oh, they're just vagabonds or they're just troublemakers.
Yeah.
They just need an outlet.
Yes.
And we need to take the time to create the atmosphere and the environments for them to thrive. And then we will also be in lifting everybody up, and the economy will be doing that much better. But if we discard them to the side, we will always have these problems. We just have to have a holistic approach.
I do want to move on in the 12 minutes that we have remaining, and I want you to put on your architect hat for this one because you alluded to it earlier on, but just a minor correction. You're a tactile person, not a tactical person. Tactical would be if you're,
Correct.
bearing arms and ready to go to war, which you might very well. You could do that as well.
Right
you
about
are
now.
that as well.
Right about now.
Right about now. I'm a bit of both.
There we go.
But listen, let's look at this Georgetown Revitalization Initiative.
Yeah.
Now, it started, likewise, under the previous administration, under the notion of building cruise piers and potentially pedestrianizing downtown Georgetown to make it more visitor-friendly.
Which I'm not opposed to.
Which neither am I. I mean, we're not saying pedestrianize all of it, but some of it, by all means, there is room for it. But this administration took that notion, and I dare say took it to the nth degree, because we have seen downtown Georgetown completely shut off from the rest of the island, so much so that media companies are referring to it as a ghost town, and quite rightfully so, because in the last 4 years now that downtown has been closed, we have seen 40-plus businesses shut down. What on earth takes this long with what we're seeing actually being done, Mr. Thompson? Again, with your architect hat on.
Lack of accountability is the short answer.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm going to tell you. So as you were saying before, I'm an architect and an entrepreneur. So I've done developments. I've developed subdivisions. I've actually, from my teenage years started, I did a lot of drawings on 7 Mile Beach through the firm that I work with to do the condos. I've done my own private practice. I've done condos up and down in the eastern districts on the southern coast. And I will say to you, every one of my projects that I've done, I've built, $1 million homes. I've built, affordable homes. And I can tell you, every project I've done had to have a start and completion date. And if you didn't reach that completion date, there are penalties.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be anything that's going on here. There seems to be a lack of accountability. Now, let me also be clear that in the industry, there's always the unknowns, and especially when you're doing renovations. So while we can be fair to that end, there was clearly something lacking here in terms of execution. And I'm not going to, there's no way I can profess to know what that was. But the short answer I'm going to give you, and fair and unfair, and I'm open to be corrected, is a lack of accountability. Because there's always a timeline associated with any project. If I'm pricing a job and I have guys that has X amount of work hours and that's X amount of dollars, if I pass that line, all of a sudden now I'm reaching into my pocket because I'm now running out of money. So either they're just saying, don't worry about it, we'll continue feeding you. And at the end of the day, the residual effect to that is businesses cannot operate because nobody wants to, first of all, can get a parking space to park within any kind of remote distance from the establishment, get there, go through the dust and the construction debris or the hoarding fences keeping you on a narrow path, to go into a dusty store because that's blocked by protection fencing.
Yeah.
So we've had now attrition, and these businesses, Caymanian-owned businesses, because at the end of the day, even if there's a foreign partner there, it has to be Caymanian-owned to some extent, and they're dead.
Yeah.
They're dead. And who gets compensated for this? I mean, I'm shocked that we haven't heard of some sort of class action suit with everybody getting together and going after the government, because it is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unacceptable. And now, on Saturday, there I am looking, tourists or not Saturday, Friday, tourists are walking on the new constructed piece by the post office.
Yeah, Cardinal Avenue.
And because there's no cohesive design again, you have marked crosswalks on Seafarers Way.
Yeah.
But now this place here, they're literally marking in the middle of the road because they see it as these pavers.
Just a walkway.
So they don't see it as a road.
Right.
And the tourists and the locals are blowing their horns at the tourists saying, get off the road. And they're going, well, what are you blowing at me for?
I'm walking on cobblestones.
Exactly.
This is pedestrian land.
Yeah, exactly. And then they don't have any, they do have it partially demarcated because I know what to look for being trained in this, but they don't have the sign saying, here's your crosswalk. Yeah. And then there's a section where there's a crosswalk which is not accessible compliant, ADA compliant, which is for handicapped wheelchairs.
Right.
The space is too tight.
Okay.
As according to code. And so I'm just thinking to myself, this is new design.
Right.
How we're not trying to fit something bigger than what it's supposed to be into this space, and therefore we're lacking this. This is newly designed. And so it just blows my mind on what's going on. This is the thing where good intentions, and you know what they say about the road to hell?
Yeah, paved.
You know?
They're cobblestone pavers.
And we can all be critical anybody can, the best design can still have its critical issues.
Well, we
but this
started
is
with the notion
this
of
is beyond the pale.
improving a setting that, to your point, had a wide open, no restrictions on timeline.
Absolutely.
But what you have approved really isn't fit for purpose. There are safety concerns, there are design concerns, and it left a lot of people scratching their heads saying, who was in charge here? I want to just pick you up on the cobblestone thing. A lot of the buildings in central Georgetown, the capital, are old.
Absolutely.
And no, we've just spent a 4-year exercise of shutting down Georgetown. We've replaced asphalt with cobblestone pavers, which, again, aesthetically very pleasing. Again, to walk on, very comfortable, very nice and whatnot, like the addition of trees and whatnot. But what happens when we go to redevelop those older buildings into newer buildings and you put a vehicle heavier than a half-ton truck on those cobblestones?
We're going to have some very unique dismantling and construction techniques by which we're going to have to employ. And let's to be fair, Cayman Bay, we can all agree, has been an amazing development, and it's certainly very well planned out, and it is actually award-winning. And so
town planning.
Thank you very much.
Word.
Yes. So they themselves do have to do occasionally renovations or what have you, and so they have very strict guidelines and ways of operating, and you have to cover roadways that their pavers and everything else with plywood, so these vehicles, and they limit the size of these vehicles.
Right.
In this particular case here, now you're going to have to work around, say, from the back, but these buildings are now aging out to the point where their structural integrity, obviously not tomorrow, and they're not going to topple over.
Right.
But a 60-year-old building has pretty much reached its lifespan.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, technology has come so far away, and we certainly didn't build like they used to do in the 18th and 1500s, where you just got big rocks. These are all blocks, and the steel is decaying.
Yes.
So we are going to have to go through that, and it is going to be a massive transformation. This is where the government needs to be proactive to say, listen, we need to revitalize this whole area here. Let's give you some import duty concessions specific to this. And you may need to make sure that you got Caymanian companies that are the ones employing to do this here, and that we're not importing cheap labor to do the work while our guys walk by looking at them saying, I can't get a job because what's the sense of me working for $6 an hour or $10 an hour when that doesn't even allow me to pay my rent or my electricity bill? So it, again, master plan on this whole thing. These buildings, I do not know what they're going to end up happening with that particular area when these older buildings are going to have to be repurposed and basically leveled, really.
Yeah, indeed. And again, what concerns me there is we spent 4 years, closed down 40-plus businesses. To your point, potential lawsuit waiting to happen. But, now we've invested in these redevelopment only to have them potentially torn up and spend that money again, which is so far taxpayer dollars. You and I, we're going to pay for this. Mr. Thompson, we've got 4 minutes left in the program. I want to give you an opportunity for some closing comments so that we can also bring the program to a close. But thank you for being our guest, and what a valuable conversation we've had today. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Appreciate it. So let me just say that the average listener can listen and go, oh well, there he is, complaining about this, that, and the other. I'm actually choosing to air this here now, and yes, it's going to come across as a complaint, and I think I can back myself up as being a valid one. Yeah. But that's to the point, because simply we are now in election season. So what I'm hoping is that the existing government, those who are hoping to get reelected, and if they are successful, and those who are working towards getting elected, come with a whole renewed approach to dealing with these sort of things.
Sure.
And so, like I said, I volunteer. I've used to be a Rotary member. I 100 men who give a damn. I donate, and I offer my services to a limited extent, because at the end of the day, if my government's going to pay hundreds of thousands on consultants, they can also employ my services. But I'm willing to give some, and that's not just me. These are members of my industry and the community who've always been willing to offer. But the point being is we want the new government that forms, to come in with a new renewed sense of vigor and understand that this has to be a holistic approach, but not just doing it by the same modus operandi, because clearly we're spinning our wheels. So it's going to take innovative thinkers, and that's what I'm promoting.
All right. Ellio, an opportunity to, again, extend our thanks.
No, absolutely. Again, Eddie, I want to thank you. I say Eddie, but it's Mr. Thompson, I should say.
It's Eddie, man.
It's Eddie for you and I, but, for everyone listening, again, thank you.
High school, Eddie.
My friend Eddie. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, for coming in the studio. Greatly appreciate it. We might actually stress as well on short notice. We appreciate that. And I would like to just echo again what Minister Bryan would have said, and I think one of the other callers, Mr. Gold, would have mentioned also. I think you need to just continue to do it. Austin, I used to say back in the day, squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease.
Can't help myself.
You squeak. But I think it's important that you keep talking and discussing these issues and keep it at the fore. That's how we bring about change. And so we'll say the same thing to you. Keep squeaking. For Austin and I will keep squeaking on our end. And we're really all about trying to bring about positive change. So keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for coming in the studio.
Thanks again.
And I know
Appreciate it.
one day we're going to bring you back in here because I remember you and I having a big discussion about local architects.
There you go.
That's something that needs to be chatted about. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have an awesome day for the rest of the
Yes,
day.
indeed. And Mr. Thompson, just to say, you take ownership. And every Caymanian should do that, young or old. This is your land, your country,
My
our
beach.
future. We should all take ownership. And that starts, yes, by exercising your right to vote, but certainly when it's not election time, is taking ownership for the issues that you see broken and wrong so that we can have them addressed. But now is certainly the time to
Good time.
complain
Good time.
because the politicians will be vying for your support. And they will
Absolutely.
be very interested to know what you think is broken. So I think the timing is perfect.
Right.
With just 1 minute remaining, an opportunity to say to the listening audience, first of all, we're grateful for Mr. Thompson's appearance here today, touching on another critical but sometimes controversial issue. Tomorrow on the program, we will be hosting the former cabinet minister and educator, Mr. Gilbert McLean. And the subject will be the Cayman Islands, should Cayman move towards developing a national lottery, one of the 3 referendum questions. Now, why Gilbert McLean, you might ask? Gilbert McLean was actually the first person to propose the notion, so much so that he campaigned on it. So he'll be chatting with us in terms of why he thinks a national lottery, even today, is a useful and good idea for the Cayman Islands. So you definitely don't want to miss that chat. That conversation begins tomorrow at 4:30, and we hope you will join us right here on Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Bobo FM. Hope you all have a wonderful evening, get home safe, and tune in again to more Straight Talk on